Club soccer in America has officially become something that most families just simply don't understand, even after years inside it. Whether your kid just joined a club or you've been doing this for years, there are realities about this system that most people never see clearly until it's already cost them time, money, and a real opportunity. Because the truth is, soccer in America isn't just a sport your kid plays on the weekend. It is a system with real financial incentives and real gatekeeping baked into it. Now, I know this because I have had close to 1,000 calls with families on one side of the fence and calls with over 1,000 college coaches on the other. I have also placed over 150 players in college programs after living and breathing this industry for years. And what I have found genuinely surprised me the first time I saw it clearly. It turns out there are really only two categories that determine whether a kid gets a real shot at playing in college or not. There are forces working against every family by default, and there are actions that determine whether those forces get overcome or not. And once you name them both clearly, you'll never look at this system the same way again. So in this video, I am going to break down 3 real problems stacked against every family in this sport, and 3 real actions that decide who gets through them anyway. By the end, you'll have a 6-point mental checklist you can run your family's own situation through. Now, before I get into 3 problems, let me explain why I'm splitting these into 2 different buckets, because it actually matters. Most families only obsess over one side of it. They obsess over the problems, the league, the money, the camps, and never actually change their actions. Or they take action, emails, camps, showcases, without ever understanding the forces working against them, so their action ends up pointed in the wrong direction entirely. You need both. Understanding the problems tells you what you're up against. Understanding the actions tells you what to do about it. Miss either half and the other half won't save you. All right, problem number 1, I call this the tier lock. Tier lock is what happens when the league your kid plays in quietly determines which programs will ever consider them, regardless of individual talent. Coaches don't scout across every level of competition equally. They recruit from specific tiers, ones that actually translate to the level of that college program. If your kid's league sits outside of the tier a program recruits from, the program was never really in play to begin with, no matter how talented your kid is individually. Now, I've had calls with genuinely gifted players who spent 2 full years aiming at programs that were never realistically going to look at their league. Not because the coach were wrong to ignore them, but because nobody had explained that the tier itself was the filter, long before talent even entered the conversation. The tactical fix is simple to say and easy to skip. Before you fall in love with any specific program, find out which tier of college soccer your kid's current league actually feeds into, and be honest about whether that tier matches what your kid is aiming for. Problem number 2, and I call this the scholarship squeeze. This is the financial filter that a lot of people don't have the bottle to say out loud. A family that can comfortably pay $100,000 a year has access to a wider range of programs than a family that can pay 50. And 50 opens up more doors than 25. The less a family can pay out of pocket, the more scholarship money their kid needs to make that program work financially. And the more scholarship money required, the smaller list of programs that can actually meet that number gets. 2 equally talented players can end up with 2 totally different outcomes. Not because one player was particularly working harder, but because one player's parents had larger pockets. The tactical fix isn't to somehow magically become richer overnight. It is to understand what that number is. Understand what your family can afford to actually pay out of pocket and build a target list that fits that accordingly. Instead of falling for a school in April and finding out this financial gap exists in June. Problem number 3, and this is actually one that a lot of families watching this are unknowingly paying into, and this is something I call the ID camp vortex. On paper, paying for a camp sounds like a smart investment. Exposure, reps in front of coaches, and a real chance to stand out. But because literally anybody can pay to attend, the talent pool at most camps is a mix of genuinely good players and players who simply pay to be there. Coaches walking into that mixed environment expect the good players to visibly separate themselves. But for more than 3 out of every 4 programs, that kind of standout performance at a camp doesn't actually translate into a real evaluation, which is why a camp invitation leads to another camp invitation, and that camp invitation usually leads to another camp invitation. And this is where that vortex name that I gave it comes into play. The tactical fix is to stop treating ID camps as a discovery tool and start treating them as a confirmation tool. A camp can be totally worth the money once the coach already knows that your kid is attending. Without that, you are mostly paying for your kid to be part of a crowd. The absolute easiest litmus test in the recruiting process is this. If the coach is willing to hop on a call with your kid prior to attending the camp, my advice is to attend it. This is the only scenario I have seen ID camps to be beneficial. So as a quick recap before we move on to the other side of this, the 3 problems working against your kid by default are tier lock, the scholarship squeeze, and the ID camp vortex. All 3 are real and all 3 are working against every single family from day one, whether you've done anything wrong or not. Navigating them takes real strategy, not guesswork. Now, while I'm on the topic of strategy, there are only 6 different strategies you can use to get recruited. And the strategy that is right for you completely depends on your kid's level, your kid's goals, and the investment that you as a parent is willing to make. Now, that investment could be money, but it can also be time. A strategy that might be perfect for one family might not even be possible to use for another. That is why knowing which strategy is the best for your family and your family's situation is so important. Now, I put together a full breakdown of these 6 strategies, and I'll pop the link in the description for you to watch it. Now, let's get on to the other half, because understanding the problems means nothing if you don't know what actually determines whether a family gets through them. Action number 1, and this is the one that I want you to sit with for the longest, is alignment. Before anything else, a family has to actually agree on what they're chasing. Not the version the kid thinks the parent wants to hear, and not the version the parent assumes the kid wants. 2 families can hit the exact same wall, the same tier lock, the same scholarship squeeze, but the family that is in alignment often comes through. The tactical fix is literally one direct conversation. Sit down with your kid and ask them plainly, how much does college soccer mean to them? Because that answer dictates the actions that come next. Action number 2 is strategy, researching the actual plan instead of just agreeing on the goal. Wanting something and having a real plan to get it are 2 completely different things. And this is exactly where most aligned families still get stuck, because there is a massive gap between agreeing we want D1 and actually understanding how a coach's roster gets built. The tactical fix is building a real target list. Action number 3 is timing. Taking action early instead of waiting for the moment that it feels right. On paper, it feels responsible to let your kid handle their entire recruiting process. But the earlier parents get involved, the better. And I know you probably hear the opposite from a lot of people. Look, college soccer recruiting isn't for the faint-hearted. It is going to take a whole family effort. The tactical fix is operating on a real timeline and pulling on the same rope all together, not just acting on a feeling. So here is the full 6-point picture. 3 problems working against your kid by default: tier lock, the scholarship squeeze, and the ID camp vortex. And 3 actions that actually decide the outcome: alignment, strategy, and timing. Run your family through all 6, and I have 0 doubt you'll be successful in this process. Avoid the work that needs to be done, and I don't have the same conviction with the outcome. The video linked in the description is your next watch. It is by far the most important video on my channel for any parent with a kid who wants to play college soccer. And with that being said, I will see you in the next one.